Hey, viewers and viewers, my name is John Red Strategist. Welcome back to So You're Being Hunted, episode 330 now, ladies and gentlemen. So, last episode, I fucked it up. As always, Wallace and Gromit challenge came to an end after I got a bit cocky and tried to investigate a load of buildings while there were robots still there in the area, and they were all sort of shooting at me and going crazy. I thought, because I've dealt with frickin' hunters before, this'll be a piece of piss, won't it? Nope. Eventually, they locked onto me. Friggin' gave me both barrels. I mean, I kind of wandered straight into one of them, and he punished me for it. So yes, people probably face-palming. Don't lie, you probably were, weren't you, ladies and gentlemen? So, as I pretty much mentioned at the end of that last episode, I'll probably do one or two podcast-style episodes now, as always, and then eventually we'll go back and we'll start out a new challenge. So, keep your challenge suggestions incoming and all that. I always make a note of them, save them in a Word document, so that I've got them right there. I can always, I just sort of pick and choose, whichever one takes my fancy. So, always worth dropping your idea in there, because you never know if and when it might get picked. So, as promised, for today's episode, we're just doing a bit of a podcast-style episode. I started talking a little bit in the previous episode, just before I failed. About the main topic, really. Obviously, by the time this video goes out, this won't be new or up to date, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Because, of course, I mentioned I'd been, over the course of August, I'd been back up north visiting family. 2 weeks I spent with them, just having a good time, So I thought, I might as well talk a little bit about that. Tell you all about the nice relaxing shenanigans that I got up to. That's two words that don't really go together, relaxing and shenanigans, but whatever. So yeah, it was good, we had a relaxing time. Just went around, went walking a little bit, went out to some nice areas. It's always tradition. I was saying this actually in one of my RTCW videos that I just recorded recently, either episode 9 or 10 of the Real Dark Army Uprising Remastered add-on that I'm playing at the moment. I was saying on there, whenever I go back up to the north, it's always sort of the case that me and my family will hop into the car and we'll bob up to Clitheroe in East Lancashire. Nice town, that. If you ever get the chance to visit it, definitely do so. It's a lovely place. They got plenty of things to see and do there. And one of the places which we always kind of visit, usually, is a place called Holmes Mill, the Bowl and Brewery. Has a nice big sort of food shop, very artisan, I have to say. Including some very expensive alcohols and whatever else have you. So there's that, which is always good to go and see. And then they have obviously the engine room, the brewery sort of, the bar that they have, which is very rustic, very traditional, very nice, very, very well-to-do, I have to say, very premium. So there's always that, and that's very good. Just a shame though that the weather wasn't very good. It was kind of raining, so me and my old man, we just ended up kind of sat in the bar at Bowl and Brewery, having a pint. It was very good. Having a bit of a catch up. It's just a very nice little time. That's all it was. So there was that. That was very good. Obviously saw my relatives and whatever else have you. It was good to see them again, see how they're getting on. Though I have to say, my grandparents on my mother's side of the family, they're they're getting quite old now. And thing is, my granddad, he's a keen gardener, but I think the garden that he has at the moment is getting a bit big for him. Because it's a nice garden, don't get me wrong. Very nice flower beds. He's done some good stuff with it, but truth be told, there's just elements of it, around the corners where it's just showing signs, like I say, that maybe it's getting a bit big for him. So, for example, quite a while back, quite a few years ago, he put in a swing seat in one corner of this garden of his, and that's been in there for a number of years, like I say. And when I visited them whilst I was back up north, we had a wander around their little garden, and I had to say that swing seat of theirs it's in a right state. It's in better days, let's just put it that way. So there's that, yeah. But yeah, it's a shame, It's possible that those grand folks on that side of the family, they may choose to move, they may downsize to something a bit smaller. Because the thing is, back in the early 2000s, moved into a new and quite big house. But like I say, it's one of those things. Maybe it's getting a bit big for them. And the interior of the house is a bit dated by now. It could do with a bit of a renovation, just to change things around and whatever else have you. So that thing. I mean, then again, that's probably the case with a lot of people's grandparents and their houses, isn't it? You go in their house and you think, God, some of the decor in here, some of the layout is just a bit old-fashioned. Really needs updating, doesn't it? Oh, that's the thing. It makes me think about, actually, my house that I grew up in as a child. I mean, technically, there were two houses, actually, now that I think about it. There was one house which we lived in when... I can't remember, actually, how long we lived in it. We lived in it till I was about, I think, 3 or 4. Actually, no, probably not 4. Probably till I was about 3. Somewhere around there. And of course, because I was so young, I don't really remember that house very well, other than what I can really see from things like family video and old photographs and whatever. But yeah, from my own memory, I don't really recall anything. No, the house that I really remember is the one that I spent the majority of my youth in, my youthful years. And I remember when we moved into it, I don't know if I mentioned it, I may have mentioned this in fact, in a previous episode, when I was joined by Phil, but well, either that or I might have spoken to him and just mentioned it offhand, off camera in one of our own little conversations. But the house that I spent the majority of my youth in, my parents actually bought that off my dad's mother because it used to belong to her. So they bought it off her because she moved away to wherever she was. She's had friggin' multiple moves in her lifetime, I have to say. But we bought it off her. And of course, so this was back obviously in the 90s. Sometime early to mid 90s, sometime around then. And, we grew up, I grew up in that. And that house went through a lot of renovations and extensions and things like that over time. Because of course, when my parents bought it from my old grandmother on my dad's side, it was, let's say, it was a good house, but once again, dated furnishings and things like that. And I can remember actually the original conservatory that house had. God, it was so, I don't know, it needed overhauling. Let's put it like that. Because I remember it was a funny house because it had this old conservatory on it, and it also had a separate garage down the side. I can still remember that really, really well, even though it was so many years ago. And in time, what my old folks, my parents, eventually did with it was they had that old conservatory knocked down. They had the kitchen extended outwards slightly into the garden, and then they had a new, much more modern conservatory put on. So they did that, and then not long after that, they had the separate garage completely knocked down, and they extended the house out over to the side with a new bedroom and 2 new bathrooms, including one that was an ensuite. So yeah, they really overhauled it and updated it, and they also, over time, have massively changed the garden. Because my mother, she's a bit of a keen gardener. She takes after her old man. And she's done so much with that garden to completely rejig it. Because the thing is, my grandmother, when she owned it, she put in some really features which really didn't age well, let's put it like that. Like in one corner, she had this massive friggin' ash tree, which honestly it wasn't very good because it was overshadowing. And sometime during the time when my grandmother lived there, when my grandfather on my father's side of the family, when he was still alive, because he died a couple of years ago of Alzheimer's, but when he was still alive and when he and my grandmother were living there was a time apparently when he thought, for some fucking reason, he wanted to get rid of the shed that they had in the corner by the ash tree. And I don't know what was going through his head, but he took it upon himself. He got it into his head that the easiest and simplest way to get rid of this shed would be to just set it on fire and burn it down. which was a stupid idea because, of course, well, it's got the ash tree near it. So basically, as you can imagine, the ash tree apparently took a bit of damage when he did that. And so ever since then, the ash tree had problems with like rot around certain elements of it, and it was always kind of a bit diseased. So yeah, eventually at one point, I can remember throughout my childhood, my dad had to keep trimming the ash tree back every sort of year, every summer. He'd get his stepladder out and his chainsaw, and he'd have to climb up and basically just cut down some of the branches on that tree because it just parts of it would just rot. It was bad. And eventually, I think they pretty much just cut away a whole load of it, thinking, "Fuck this! We're gonna chop it right down, so that we don't have to worry about it as much." So there was that tree, and in the other corner of the garden, there was another giant ash tree that my grandmother had put in, which in time my parents eventually got rid of, because again, it's just big trees like that. They cast shadows over the garden, and sometimes you want your garden to be a nice, bright, airy space. But when you've got giant ash trees like that, they create shade. And, that's not too bad if you've got a really, really big garden with plenty of space in it. But if, of course, you're living in like a, town outskirts, maybe a suburban kind of area, where you've got a decently sized garden, but not maybe a huge one. I mean, my parents, they have a pretty decently sized garden. It's very nice. But big trees like that, they just overshadow it. Like I say, they cast a lot of shade on it. And if you're trying to, grow plants and flowers, things like that, it's just not ideal. And what made it worse was that under this other tree, my grandmother had put in a rockery. Now, isn't that an old-fashioned garden feature? Friggin' dated as hell. And I remember that friggin' rockery as well. The problem with that rockery was that because it was under that tree, and that tree wasn't an ash, it was something else. It was some kind of fir, and so of course it had needles on it, and it would shed needles all throughout the friggin' year. And I remember as a kid, when I didn't really know about this, not really thinking about it, I would gather around the garden barefoot in summer, and I can remember more than once making the mistake of trying to walk on that rockery with bare feet when there's frigging pine needles everywhere. Not pine needles, fir needles, whatever the hell they were. I can't remember what kind of tree it was, to be honest. All I can remember is that it had needles. I can remember trying to walk on that. It's like fucking stepping on Lego, except thinner. Good lord. But yeah, I can remember that old garden very well. But, in the years since then, my parents have really done a good job of jazzing it up, getting rid of some of the dated features in it. Yeah. And they had a shed at one point in that garden, but they got rid of it. Instead, they put like a little veg bed, because they love growing their own veg. They got the greenhouse, they grow the tomato plants, things like that. Once again, like I say, my mother takes after my grandfather on her side, because he loves growing his veg as well. Man, my voice feels like it's going a bit. Because I've been having a big recording session today. I've recorded 2 episodes of RTCW, and counting this episode, 2 episodes of Sir so far. But yeah, like, my mother takes after my granddad. He likes growing his veg. He grows all kinds of things. He has a plant in the front garden at his place where he's growing figs. He has his greenhouses. He has 2 of them. Where he grows all kinds of things. Plums and God knows what else. He has the veg beds where sometimes he does root vegetables, like carrots, stuff like that. And I always think to myself, when I was a teenager, and I was in high school, I always thought to myself, maybe I should try gardening at some time. Now, of course, since I'm living in a rented flat at the moment, that's not really possible because I don't have a garden or anything like that. And so the only space I really have is maybe space for a couple of little potted plants in the flat, which is not really gardening, is it? Because you're just putting them somewhere in a corner somewhere and then just watering them every once in a while. But yeah, I always thought to myself, if and when I get myself a proper house, I'd like to, invest a bit of time into making the garden nice. I always think to myself, maybe I'd put a greenhouse in and maybe I'd actually have a go at growing some kind of veg. Or something, I don't know what. Maybe some peas or something, I don't know. It's always nice, isn't it, when you grow your own veg? I always remember, because back when I was living with my parents and they first made their veg beds, one time they did grow peas, peas in pods, and it was always nice when the weather was good and you'd step outside, take a look at the peas, and you'd see, some of them are grown, some of them are ready to be picked. You'd pluck them off, and, you'd pull the little pod open, and you could just eat them straight out the pod, like that. Always pleasant. I always remember once they also got a plant called, I think it's called stevia, and stevia is an edible plant. Its leaves are edible. You can actually just pick them off, and you can eat them as they are. And they have an interesting little taste to them. I can't remember what it was, but I remember it just tasted really interesting. I can't remember if it was sort of like a sweet kind of taste. Oh yeah, memories, ladies and gents. This wasn't actually what I was going to talk about in this episode, but it's a nice little bit of a nostalgia trip for me. So, you know what, I'm going to talk about it. But yeah, shelling those peas, picking them straight out the pod, popping them in your mouth and eating them. Good stuff. Very good stuff. Just trying to remember what other veggies and things have my parents or my grandparents ever tried to grow. I know my mother actually did once grow an aubergine in a friggin' greenhouse, maybe more than one. I have to say, aubergines, not my favourite kind of veg. I'm not hugely keen on them. I can eat them though. They are alright, just not my favourite. It's always good though when you get a bit of aubergine in a nice moussaka. Oh, now that's a good dish. That's a meal. That's a meal I've not had in a long time. A good moussaka. A lot of people just sort of, when they make moussaka, they just pile in lots of potato. And yeah, you are supposed to put potato in it, but you're supposed to put much more than that. Aubergines, I think, are a classic ingredient in a good moussaka. So you need to get a bit of aubergine in there. And once you get it combined with the other ingredients, the mince, the potato, it doesn't taste too bad. It tastes quite nice, actually. But yeah, aubergine is not something I'd eat typically on its own. Just saying. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that, ladies and gentlemen. Another dish that I, up until recently, hadn't eaten in a while. Lasagna. A good lasagna. That's always a nice one, isn't it? Oh, nice and filling. Oh, yes. Oh man, I need to make myself another of those at some point. That's the thing, I need to experiment a bit more with cooking some more interesting dishes. Because, my cooking skills, I can do basic stuff, but I need to experiment a bit even. Try out some new things. Okay, right. Just looking at my clock, I think we've been recording for a good while there, so I'm probably going to start wrapping things up here for this podcast-style episode. So, I had a bit of a chin wag there. It was a very nice little topic, that was. I think I might get recording the next episode straight away and just do another podcast-style episode, and then after that we might move into another challenge. So yeah, there you go then, ladies and gents. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. In the meantime, of course, Facebook and Twitter links down below as usual, so you can go and check those out if you're interested. Let me know in the comments, of course. Anyone into gardening out there, or veg growing, or whatever. But in the meantime, I'm signing off now. Goodbye, everybody. Way inside here. He's right fucking there. I can't fucking turn the camera though, because of the glitch. Oh, balls. Ooh, whoa, what the? Whoa! What? What just happened? I just jumped and... Whoa! Whoa! This isn't right. This is not right. Big Robot, if you're watching this, this is not right. I'm pretty sure the game is not supposed to be doing this.